Can we title yesterday's event "National Lampoon Siege of the Capitol"? I mean, it was like Animal House,
Yeah, there was a great tweet by somebody saying this was like the storming of the Bastille as perpetrated by the cast of Animal House.
Right, totally.
And there was another
Totally.
great tweet saying the Capitol now appears to be under the control of a man in a Viking mask.
The best one was, I have lost all respect for Nicolas Cage's ability to steal the U.S. Constitution.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently. Yeah, whatever copies left. All right, so let's just go through the chain of events here. And it was absolutely surreal because Trump literally went out to a mob of people and said, I want you to march down Pennsylvania Avenue and show the GOP what it takes to have courage, etc. Mike Pence apparently told Trump that he was not going to go to bat for him in this ceremonial process of counting the votes. And lo and behold, you're watching this, the objections going on to the electoral count, and you see the Secret Service come rushing in, and it becomes a very serious situation. And when you watch some of the videos, it is truly terrorizing that thousands of people overwhelmed the police. And I guess I want to start with people's opinion on Trump's culpability in inciting what was very dangerous behavior. 4 people are dead. So while we're joking about the cosplay outfits, a woman who was an ardent Trump supporter, who is a vet, who did 4 tours from what I've read, and I shared the video with you before, literally, as they broke into the building, was trying to breach another area of the building, and she's climbing through a window and gets shot, apparently by the Secret Service or the police, and dies. And so it's all fun and games until 4 people are dead, and now somebody's lost their wife, daughter,
no, but
sister.
Jason, I mean, there could have been 400 dead. There could have been 4,000
Absolutely.
dead.
Yeah, I mean, this could have become a shootout at the OK Corral. I can't understand why the police showed the restraint they did. I mean, when you see them getting surrounded, I don't know if you saw the one.
They didn't show restraint, Jason. There was no police. When you look at the amount of security that's typically there and has been there for other situations, and then you compare it to the amount of security, knowing for a month and a half that this was coming, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm a little dumbfounded that you couldn't have seen this Facebook group called hashtag Storm the Capitol, which had tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of members in there, plotting and scheming, selling merchandise called Storm the Capitol. These guys were wearing printed sweatshirts that they had time to make, and nobody knew about it, and nobody thought to reinforce the security and barricade it and make sure that you couldn't go from the protest site to the I mean, it just seems like there's some level of complicity that needs to get found out here.
But there was an interview I saw with an ex-DC police guy who said that I think folks were told to tamper down. The police forces were told to tamper down on managing crowds and protests and riots following the controversy associated with BLM a few months ago, and spraying folks with pepper spray and water and all the physical techniques that were used were so outraging that there was just more of a systemic concern about being too aggressive with protesters, and as a result, they went too far the other way. It's not an unreasonable.
So it just happens to be, Friedberg, that when black people protested and brown people, they got the tear gas and beaten with batons, and then when the white people stormed the Capitol in the same area, they got walked down the steps and escorted out with a stern warning to not do it again. I mean, this is hypocritical and insane.
I don't know why you have to go there particularly. It looked to me like what happened is that the Capitol Hill police simply got completely overwhelmed. You look at these, giant. This is a rally on the mall that turned into a mob. Well, first it kind of turned into a tailgater, then it turned into a mob, and then it turned into an insurrection. It kind of stumbled forward into progressive phases of stupidity and disaster. But it looked to me like the Capitol Hill police simply got overwhelmed. They obviously were unprepared. They were surprised, I think, by this. And I saw video of tons of tear gas being used. I saw people getting tear gas like crazy. And I think there was reports this morning on Twitter that the whole area in front of the Capitol there was covered in that light film that remains after tear gassing. So I don't think they were really pulling punches too much. And I also think that there will be prosecutions. I think that these people were captured on video. There's a lot of talk on Twitter, and everybody is in favor of finding out who they are, applying facial recognition, and bringing charges. So I think there will be a lot of charges, unlike, let's say, the BLM protests this summer. I don't remember anybody getting charged based on video of people rioting or looting. And then I think, the final difference actually with the BLM protests is that if you've watched Fox News at all in the last 24 hours, the condemnation of the storming of the Capitol, of what happened, has been across the board, both right and left. Everybody across the political spectrum has condemned it. Nobody is apologizing for it. Nobody on the right is looking for root causes to explain the reasons why it happened. Everybody is just condemning it and saying that it should never have happened, and the people who did it should be prosecuted. And so I don't see any kid gloves here being used, either physically or
I'll tell you where I see the kid
rhetorically.
gloves, Sacks, is when you see officers being chased up the steps and or taking selfies, which is one instance. I don't want to just say that's the only indicative thing, but when people are breaking through windows and just kind of being let go, I mean, they were obviously overwhelmed, but I'm surprised more people didn't get shot. Chamath, let's just tackle this head on in terms of the race issue.
But I have a question for David before I make my statement. David, do you think that if this were black and brown people storming the Capitol, would there have been more or less than 4 deaths?
Honestly, I think it would have been the same. I just
disagree. I disagree.
I really disagree. And I'll tell you why. I think you have the best of intentions wanting to think that way, but here's the way I see it. I see a president that basically instigated a group of people who are fundamentally disenfranchised. Let's face it, like there are a lot of very, very reasonable Republicans and a lot of very reasonable Democrats. The fringes of both parties are functionally mentally retarded. We know this, okay? And so what you see are extreme on both sides who are just completely lost and looking for any excuse. And so you have a president in the tail end of his presidency, an anonymous presidency, basically call them out. Nobody who actually had a job or anything to do could show up, right? So you had all these people show up.
It's a Wednesday. Yeah.
It's a Wednesday during the day. I mean, and what do you think happens? They're there. They're all frothed up. Eric Trump frothing them up, Donald Trump Jr. frothing them up, Trump frothing them up, Giuliani frothing them up. And all of a sudden, as you said, stumbling into degrees of craziness and stupidity to storm the Capitol. And I just think to myself, how could a president instigate this kind of action? Number one. The second thing I think about is when black athletes peacefully protested something that they had the fundamental constitutional right to protest. In the president's eyes, they were sons of bitches. White people that stormed the fucking Capitol, the people's house, were called patriots by the president's daughter. And
Which
then
she deleted.
We're told that they were loved by the president himself. To me, it's just an enormously stark contrast of a double standard. I think that beyond the persecutions of the people, I actually feel very bad for the people that stormed the Capitol. I feel like these are folks that are on the fringes who just need a vessel, and Trump is a vessel, and then he instigates them and runs away. You know what I mean?
He's a coward. He's lost. These are lost people.
Then these guys commit the crime and now they're going to go to jail. I feel like the culpability has to go all the way back to Trump, to Hawley, to Cruz. These guys those are the real scumbags in all of this.
Friedberg, what are your thoughts on this? And then I'll go back to Sacks and let him respond.
Yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that if this was a Black Lives Matter and it was black people involved or brown people involved in the same sorts of activities you saw yesterday, that you would not see more shootings. I don't think that's an unreasonable position to take. Obviously, I think there's this other circumstance, which is that event preceding this one. As I mentioned, I saw an interview with a DC police former police director of the police, or I forgot what his title was, where he highlighted that, folks were kind of instructed to stand down following the BLM controversies. And so I think that's also kind of a reasonable point of view. And what
about the president's culpability? I mean, I think that's one issue that's going to have to be addressed post. And I think we have to figure out what life post-Trump is going to be like, because this is a level of chaos that nobody, to Sacks's point, all people condemned.
There's a theory which actually takes its origin from Hitler, where Hitler used this term, the big lie. And, the theory is that you can create political propaganda by saying something that's so outrageous. It is so improbable that people say there's no way this thing keeps getting said over and over unless it's actually real. And this is sort of like the QAnon pedophile ring in the pizzeria, or the fact that the election was stolen from you. It is such an outrageous statement that it seems to people that it only has to be true, because it is such an insane thing. And if it is, it's so insane, and I am so incited by this thing. So this is kind of acknowledged as being a political propaganda technique that goes back a long time. By the way, Hitler used it as a way to used it as almost like a double bluff to blame the Jews in Germany, which was an unfortunate kind of origin of the term. But the term is used a lot now in saying like these sorts of events are ridiculous. Now, what's going to happen going forward? I don't think big lies go away. You can try and mute them on Twitter and mute them on Facebook or mute them on Reddit, but whether it's QAnon or whatever is next, this is becoming kind of a standard form now because of the way media is distributed. Anyone can say a big lie and it gets a lot of listens. And Trump is totally culpable for that. He made some shit up. He made a bunch of claims. I mean, if you guys haven't seen Lindsey Graham's speech yesterday, it is absolutely worth watching that he gave late last night.
I saw it.
And he's like, I asked for the show me the 10, give me 10 people that claim that they voted and they were under 18. He's like, they gave you one. Give me anyone that was in prison or died, and they gave me 0. And he's like, goes on for a couple minutes about how none of what was said about what happened in the election was true, and it was all false. And he's like, this is all just not true. And so I think Trump is culpable for creating a falsehood and having a megaphone. And there were certainly
what about the inciting of violence? That is, I think, where the rubber is going to meet the road. Trump's going to be out of office in 2 weeks or less, one way or the other. Do you, and let me just take it to Sacks. Sacks, I want to give you the time to respond to the issue of the double standard in terms of race and BLM. And then also, do you, Sacks, if you're on Biden's team coming in, do you advise that you prosecute Trump or investigate Trump for this insurrection? Yes or no?
Okay, so just to tie off on the BLM issue, I just fundamentally don't think that race is the issue here. Chamath, look, I don't know at the end of the day what the fatalities would have been if it had been a BLM protest that went awry. But I will stick to what I said before, which is I predict that you will see more prosecutions come out of this of the people who are involved. I'm talking about the people who stormed the Capitol than we saw from all the BLM protests over the summer. I mean, I don't remember any prosecutions coming out of videotape of people being caught recorded looting and rioting. And I predict you will see more here. And again, I think another difference, again, to the extent there's a double standard, I remember a lot of left-wing news networks calling the rioting and looting this summer peaceful protests, which they clearly were not. You even had a book called In Defense of Looting. And I don't hear anybody defending the storming of the Capitol. Nobody on the right. So, to the extent there's a double standard, I don't know that it accrues to the BLM side of this. But look, I think that's kind of beside the point and not the real issue here. I mean, Jason, to your question of, is Trump responsible? Yes. I mean, clearly.
100%.
100%. Yes, because he he is the one who put forth this theory that the election was stolen and was constantly repeating it for the last 2 months. 2 months ago, right after the election, there was an article published in The Spectator called "Deplorables Don't Riot." It was actually a pretty good op-ed. It was written by a conservative. And the conservative's point was that, all these windows and shops have been boarded up in anticipation of potential rioting and looting with the election. And all these conservatives were saying, well, who are they afraid of? Not us, not the MAGA folks. Well, and the theory was deplorables don't riot. And the right was proud of that 2 months ago. And now we are seeing that, well, no, the deplorables are rioting. Why is that? What changed over the last 2 months? And what changed is the constant feeding to this group of people, this idea, starting with Trump, but then perpetuated by, different right-wing media organizations and other politicians who sort of were, trying to curry favor with Trump. They were constantly pushing forward this idea that the election was stolen, so that these people on the mall who then rioted and stormed the Capitol believed that the election was being stolen from them. So, ultimately that responsibility is Trump's.
So to be clear, and reflecting back to you, you're saying Trump incited sedition. Is that the right word?
Well,
sedition.
Sedition doesn't seem like the exact right word to me. I mean,
a riot.
It was certainly a riot. Now look. I mean, you're talking about prosecuting a legal case. If you want to look at the legal standard for incitement, it has to be, provoking people to take an imminent lawless act.
Feels pretty close.
I think he if you want to see this mob as a gun, I think he loaded the gun. He pointed it in a certain direction, but did he tell them to storm the Capitol? No, not specifically. I think, therefore, it'd be a very hard case to prosecute. But I think, prosecuting him in a court of law is sort of unnecessary and redundant. I mean, I think that in the eyes of the public, politically, he is. I think most people see that he's culpable. And
is that the end of his political career?
I think he's disqualified himself from being a candidate at a national level again. I mean, if you look, again, just go back 2 months ago, look at how much has changed. 2 months ago, just in the day or two after the election, Trump had narrowly lost, but there was talk of him starting a new news network to rival Fox. There was talk about he could even be a candidate again in 2024. It was not off the table. I think now it's clearly off the table, and you've seen. It's partly because of the Georgia runoffs, which we should get to. But again, the Republican candidates, at least one of them, had won that election 2 months ago, and now they lost. And that has a lot to do with Trump's antics in the meantime of just feeding this constant, lie about the stolen election.
All right, Chamath,
I think there's a really important question about, but is it worth prosecuting Trump post fact? Does that do more harm or good for the country as a whole? Certainly, there'll be a lot of people that would get great satisfaction of putting Trump in prison. And a lot of people are calling for that. But we really do need to question the incredible divide in the nation and what's the best way to heal the divide. The objective shouldn't be pursuing justice. It should be about moving forward. I'm not suggesting don't prosecute Trump, but I think that it's worthy of noting that, there is another way of framing this whole thing, which is what's the best thing to do going forward. Though on the flip side, you could even make the case that one of the best things Joe Biden could do today or tomorrow is to announce a federal election review commission to actually look into wrongdoings at the state level with on a bipartisan basis.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's a slam dunk case anyway.
If Biden did that, and he basically embraced the notion that a lot of folks are really angry about, and said, "I'm listening to you, I'm hearing you, let me show you," and at the same time they did not prosecute Trump and let him go off into the distance and do his own thing, maybe you start to kind of heal the rift a little bit. But right now, everyone's kind of inflamed, and there is this how do we prosecute him? What do we do when he's and we're just continuing to kind of escalate the dialogue and increase the rift.
Look, I think prosecuting Trump at this point, first of all, legally that might be a difficult case to prove because of the need to prove that that he was trying to provoke an imminent lawless action. If he had been at the barricades, pushing people forward, yes. But so I think legally it'd be a tough case. And I think like you said, it'd be unnecessarily divisive and partisan. I don't know why we need to go there. I mean, at the end of the day, any politician's stock in trade is their credibility and popularity. And Trump has fundamentally damaged the perception of him, I think, even among the right.
I have a huge issue with this, and I'll tell you why. It's because the folks that are now going to go to jail were instigated by this guy. And the folks that were there in many ways were brought, they were cajoled, they were instigated to travel groomed to travel there, to take the time out of their lives, to basically then get fed this rhetoric, and in a moment of just crazy mob-like mentality to act out at the behest of the leader of the free world. There has to be a consequence, not just to those people, because they in many ways are not the person to prosecute. To the extent that you are going to put some of these people in jail, which it looks like we're going to. And by the way, let's be honest, there is no inconceivable way that these people get charged with a misdemeanor. That's not going to stand, right? And the worst perpetrators of this, when they get put in jail, will get put in jail for 5 to 10 years minimum. And so what are we going to do when we look at ourselves in the eye and say, these poor Americans at the end of the day who were instigated by this guy, and he yet again gets off scot-free, while hundreds of Americans who were basically in a peak of craziness fed by this guy does something and goes to jail, and you have hundreds of lives and hundreds of families ruined. Even if we don't find a way to basically put Trump in jail for this, I can 100% guarantee you, I will bet $1 million that now the Southern District of New York, gloves off. Every single state that can go after this guy, gloves off. And to the extent that Joe Biden had any incentive to basically let this go away at the federal level, gloves off. In my opinion, I really think something's going to happen.
Let's say that folks do go after Trump. What does that do if he gets put in jail, or he gets there's some criminal proceeding brought against him? What does that do to the 50% of the nation that truly support him and truly care about him? I don't like the balance of justice versus unification. I
think we're talking actually about 25% of the country.
I don't even think it's that.
Whatever it is, right? Or whatever it is. Like, there's obviously a big voting block and a big block of the potential block for the electoral college.
I think of the 70 million people that voted for Donald Trump, I think there are half of them who would equally vote for a normal centrist candidate.
Mitt Romney.
And
Nikki Haley
didn't necessarily believe in Donald Trump. Then I think there's the other 35 million. And I do think that there's a spectrum of those 35. And I think that you probably lost 10 or 15 million of them after the events of yesterday, where they just threw their hands up in the air and said, hey, wait a minute.
It would really only inflame 20 million is what you're saying.
Correct. And I agree with Chamath on that.
Right.
And those 20 million people are, sad to say, concentrated in about 10 states that don't functionally matter economically or otherwise. And so
the balance of justice versus unification, certainly it sounds like you're saying weighs heavily towards justice, right? Like more folks will benefit from seeing him come to justice, or what perceived justice, than
I think it'll allow the Republican Party to recenter itself. I think that's better for politics. I think it's better for governance. It's better for America. I think it allows a lot of people to basically wake up out of this haze that they've been in 4 years and say, wow, wait a minute. Enough's enough. Like, I was on a really bad bender. I did a couple things I really regret, and I need to recenter myself.
How do you not find this turning into a tit for tat Berlusconi, Italy, Brazil, Israel kind of phenomenon where, future leaders are then attacked and challenged and taken?